So here we go. Top 12 quarterback rankings going into week 9. So this is the 12 best quarterbacks I say will end week 9. Number 1, Russell Wilson. What could you say? What a season it's been for Russell Wilson. 26 touchdowns. And it's only the 9th week of the season. And once again, he'll have a great matchup. I don't care who he versus. You pencil him in for 35 to 40 fantasy points each and every week. He's in Buffalo this week. It's going to be cold a little, but it don't matter. Russell Wilson, he's got monsters on that roster. He's got DK, Lockett, Carson if he plays, and Russell will do his thing. So I think he'll finish the week as the number 1 quarterback. Number 2, you got Patrick Mahomes after coming off a 416-yard performance and 5 touchdowns versus the Jets this week. His numbers I don't think will be that great, but he'll be a great quarterback as usual. He's locked in the number 2 spot versus the Carolina Panthers. He'll still get his numbers. He'll still do his thing. The 3rd quarterback on my rankings for the week's Deshaun Watson. Ever since Bill O'Brien finally got fired out of Houston, he should have been fired once they traded DeAndre Hopkins away for virtually David Johnson and not even get a first rounder. But anyway, since the reins of O'Brien have been gone off of Watson, he's been balling out, has Deshaun Watson, and this week he gets a plus matchup versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, who I expect them to smoke him early and often, is Watson. He could have a monster fantasy game as well, is Deshaun. So this guy, I'm ranking him the 3rd quarterback going into the week with the matchup alone. The 4th is Kyle Murray. Another guy, MVP dark horse in my opinion, is Kyle Murray. This guy, he runs the ball a lot. He hits his receivers. He's got a good supporting cast around him. I think Chase Edmonds, adding him into the lineup, just helps Murray even more. He's a better receiving back out of the backfield than Kenyon Drake. So Murray, he's going to be a top 4 quarterback this week. Number 5 is Josh Allen. I see him for a bounce back this week, and it's matchup based. He's versus the Seattle Seahawks, and Allen, his last 4 games in fantasy have been mediocre at best, but this week he's going to have to throw early and often. Buffalo in a big game at home again after coming off a nice victory versus the Patriots, but they versus Russ in Seattle. And the good thing is Seattle gives up the 2nd most fantasy points to quarterback. So Allen, he's going to have a top 5 day. The 6th guy's Big Ben. It was a toss-up to me with Big Ben and Allen for that 5th spot, because Big Ben's matchups, Money in the Bank versus a weak Dallas Cowboy defense. But the only thing, I think James Conner, he's going to get some carries and touchdowns as well. But Ben, we could pencil him in for around 300 yards and 2 touchdowns at least, is Roethlisberger. The 7th guy is Justin Herbert. And this guy, he's putting up numbers all year. And if you luckily have him in your team or picked him up in week 4 or 5 when he was starting to get the buzz and making noise, you're lucky. This guy goes for 300 yards or 3 touchdowns each and every game. I know I say it and sound like a broken record a lot, but this guy, he's Money in the Bank as well. Herbert versus the Raiders. I got him at the 7th spot in the rankings, but he could definitely be top 3, which he's done a few times this year. The 8th guy, Aaron Rodgers, we'll see him tomorrow night on Thursday Night Football versus the San Francisco 49ers. And after a bad loss at home to a 1-5 Minnesota Viking team, you know that next game after a bad game, Aaron Rodgers goes off. We saw it a few weeks ago after a tough loss to Tampa. After a tough loss versus Tampa Bay, we saw Rodgers come back with a vengeance that next week after a bad fantasy game versus Houston with a huge fantasy day. 283 yards and 4 touchdowns. Last week he had a great fantasy day as well with 291 yards and 3 touchdowns. But after a tough loss, I think Rodgers, he's going to put up similar numbers again. But I got him ranked in the 8th hole. The 9th hole's Tom Brady of the Tampa Bay Bucks. He's going to get a new toy this weekend. We don't know how much he's going to use Antonio Brown in his first game back. But Chris Godwin, he practiced today too, so he should be back. Brady, he wants revenge on that Week 1 loss to Drew Brees and the Saints in a game he didn't look good. Even last week, Brady was a little flat versus the Giants in Week 8, but I think he'll be the 9th best performer of the week. The 10th guy, Lamar Jackson, a lot of people down on him, and I can't blame you. They drafted him in the 1st round or 2nd round. I seen some managers go overboard and get Jackson. He's not running the ball as much as he did. his last two fantasy performances not horrible. In week 6, he had 30 versus Philly, and then last week versus Pitt in a tough matchup for the division, he had 24 fantasy points, but he did lose 2 fumbles and threw 2 windows. So Lamar, he's not what he was last year. He's not going to win the MVP. He's only got 3 games of 30 or more this year. But I think this week he'll have a bounce back, and I got him ranked as the 10th best quarterback at the week in Indianapolis. The 11th man is Cam Newton versus the New York Jets. I know Cam, I haven't been a big believer of him of late or most of the season. I said to drop him 2 weeks ago. Last week he had a mediocre fantasy day versus Buffalo, but he's in a dream matchup this week versus the New York Jets, and I think Newton could get right. He could even get 100 yards on the ground maybe and a touchdown or 2. So Cam Newton, he's going to be a solid performer this week. So I got him as the 11th quarterback, and the 12th and final quarterback I have on my list to make it this week is Derek Carr of the Vegas Raiders. He versus a Los Angeles Charger team that does not protect leads. They give up a lot of passing yards. Quarterbacks going off. We saw Drew Lock last week throw for 280 yards and 3 touchdowns. So Derek Carr, I could see him have a good game, especially versus that Charger defense that's very soft in the secondary, and also traded Desmond King early in the week before the trade deadline. The weather should be nice. It's in Los Angeles, the game, in a nice new dome, I should say, actually. So Derek Carr, he could have a 250-yard game and 2 or 3 touchdowns. So that's the top 12 quarterbacks I have this week in my ranking.